Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for EVE Echoes. Today is Friday, which means that yesterday was Thursday, which means that there was a developer Q&A put up on the official EVE Echoes Twitter account, which I completely forgot about because I was busy making exploration videos on the 5 sites that I would like to see added to EVE Echoes. If you haven't already gone and watched that one, I'll put a link above. Do go check it out, because clearly I was so engrossed in making that I forgot that the weekly dev Q&A was on its way. For those of you who don't know, every week the official Twitter account for EVE Echoes puts out 4 questions that the community have asked, the developers have then answered. If you want to ask a question, if there's something you really want to know, then click on the AI button in-game, tap on Q&A, and then type in your question. 4 of these are chosen each week to be answered. Anyone that is chosen wins a month of basic Omega, and you get featured on the Twitter page, and you get featured in my video as well, which is kind of a triple whammy of awesomeness if you ask me, but hey, that might just be my opinion. All I ask though is, if you are going to ask a question, please check out my playlist on Dev Q&A already. I've got a load of these up. I do this every single week. Please make sure that your question A hasn't already been answered, and B isn't an obviously already in-game answer. There have been quite a few of these recently, and I just feel like that's taking up a slot on the Dev Q&A. I'm not going to say that there's anything such as that. I think there is no such thing as a stupid question, but there is such thing as a question that's already been answered numerous times. Anyway, with that all said and done then, as usual, hit like on this video if you enjoy it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for all things EVE Echoes, and check out our Patreon and our Redbubble merchandise store if you want to go the extra mile to support this channel. Otherwise, let's jump into the developer Q&A for the week of the 5th of May to the 11th of May. Now, the first question here that gets answered is, have you planned to add more features to help manage a corporation, like wallet divisions to the corporation wallet? Now, Melos replies here, you can now transfer ISK from a Corp wallet to a designated member through the contract system. Once we have additional gameplay mechanics go live, we may then review the current setup for corporation management in the future. Now, I get where whoever asked this question, I get where they're coming from here. It would be nice to have multiple different corporation wallets. Something that you can pay your miners with, something that you can pay your, ratters with, and that kind of thing. You can have input-output going into different wallets so people can donate into different wallets that all come under the same corporation assets. That said, I'm honestly personally against this, and I don't mean that in any aggressive way. I'm not saying this is a stupid idea, it's not. I get why people would want this. I just quite like the fact that you have to have someone in a corporation who is basically an accountant. That's kind of the point. It adds a whole new role to the game. Corporation money management is a big part of EVE, and I think that it always should be. So I think having this one corporation wallet that people oversee and distribute out to A, B, C, and D is all part of the experience. That said, you may disagree with me on that, and that's absolutely fine. I get that that isn't necessarily everyone's stance. I wouldn't be against them adding more, wallet tabs and things. I just think it becomes needlessly complex to a system that already has responses to it, has a way to deal with all of this. And I'm just not sure it's something that I want the developers spending time on personally, but hey, tell me in the comment section that I'm wrong and that this is something that you really want, and tell me why. I'm open to that. I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying I don't understand why you would necessarily want that. Anyway, let's move on. With the introduction of Dreadnought capital ships in August, can we expect other capital ships to be released at the same time? If not, when can we expect carriers, force auxiliaries, and titans to be introduced into the game? Oh lord, titans. Oh man, I can't wait for the day that the first group of people make a Titan, spend months putting it all together, finally get it built, fly it out into space, and then forget to log out safely and it gets destroyed. That's what happened in EVE Online, by the way, with Steve, which was the official first Titan built. A feat so impressive that the developers at CCP had to actually go and manually check that everything had been done correctly, and that they weren't trying to cheat the game just to get the first Titan. Then, yes, in a big fight, Steve fled the system and didn't log out correctly, at which point it was left there floating in space. Enemy fleet caught it, locked it down, and blew it up without so much as a howdy doody. That wreckage is actually still flying in EVE Online. You can go out and find the wreckage of Steve, the first ever Titan, which was the Amar one, built by players. It's still there. The developers left it in as an in-game landmark. Anyway, so Lance Dot replies to this one. Cynos should go live sometime in August or September, and the first wave of capital ships released would only consist of Dreadnoughts. Though we already have the resources to release Force Auxiliaries and Titans, we want to make capital ships feel different in EVE Echoes. Because of this, we will work on additional features for capital ships between August and December in order to bring a better experience to all of you. Now, Lancedot really nails down something here that I'm very excited about, and I really like that the developers are considering. I know a lot of people sit there and say, oh, well, it's like this in EVE Online, why isn't it like this in Echoes? And yes, I'm guilty of that too, sometimes. I think there are some things that EVE Echoes should do very similar to EVE Online. Destroyer's role, for example, being one of them. But just because it's done one way in EVE Online doesn't mean it has to be, or even should be done that way in EVE Echoes, especially if there's a way to improve upon it and make it even better. And I like the fact that they are looking at the capital ships like Titans and Force Auxiliaries here, to actually make them feel different to just it's another big ship. Like, it's bigger than a battleship and slower and heavier and rah rah rah. That's not exciting. It's not overly exciting. I know a lot of people love flying Titans, etc. in EVE Online, but I like the fact that developers are considering how this is going to work in EVE Echoes. Now, just for those of you who don't know, it says here that Cynos should go live sometime in August and September. Cynos is short for Cynosural Fields. Basically, you have a ship drop a Cynosural field in a system. Then the Titan or Dreadnought or whatever it is that is going to be jumping activates its jump drive and essentially jumps to that Cynosural field, and it spends fuel based on how far it is away based on systems. Because Titans, Dreadnoughts, Force Auxiliaries, these are ships that are too big to use Stargates. They cannot jump between systems because they are that big. They can't use the standard gates to jump between systems because they're that big. A lot of these can't dock at standard space stations either because, again, they're too big. So the concept here is that a Cynosural field is kind of a manual way of setting up your own temporary jump gate. It has some really cool abilities. It means that, yes, you can sit there and jump between systems. You can actually jump multiple systems if you have enough fuel ready for the jump. That said, the sort of downside, and one of the things that I always found really quite intimidating about this, is it does literally allow you, if you're clever enough, to drop a Cynosural field right in the middle of the enemy's sort of territory, and you just skip any gate camps, any gates, any scouting that your enemy fleet might be doing, and just dump your fleet straight in the middle of their operation, which is terrifying. I've never been a fan of Titans and Force Auxiliaries and Dreadnoughts because these are too big. Capital ships are just too big for me. I like my destroyers and my frigates. I can just about get away with cruisers and a Hurricane. A Hurricane is fast enough that I basically qualify it as a cruiser. Anything bigger and slower than that, and I lose interest personally. So giving me something like Titans and Dreadnoughts and capital ships, it's just too slow. But I know a lot of people are very excited about that. Let's move on because I'm languishing on that one quite a bit. For Cap and Corp outposts' citadels, will there be an option to have them look different, like the other factions' pirate faction stations? It could just be cosmetic, or they could have their own benefits and need to be built that way. Now, this is why I say please check that your question hasn't already been asked. This was asked literally 2 weeks ago. Are we getting skins for Capsuleer outposts and Corporation citadels? Once again, Melos says yes. We already plan on adding the ability to customize the look of your citadels and outposts. This would only be available once we add additional structures to citadels. We may begin working on this in September. Remember, August is the next big update. They're going to be adding other stuff in the meantime, like in June, we've got Exploration. Not entirely sure what's going to happen in July. August is another balance update, which is going to tweak things based on how we actually handle the current update on live. Plus, we're getting things like the arena, an updated beginner experience. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming in August. I'm really, really excited for it. Obviously, that is the 1 year anniversary of the game going live, and I could not be more excited for this. However, this question was answered before, and I feel like this means that this week we've only got 3 questions. Please do just check that your question hasn't already been answered, although in fairness, I would like the devs to look at a question and not just answer the same ones again. Sit there and say, well, we've already answered this one, and just move on to something different. Anyway, If and when will wow, I really lost it there. Sensor dampeners. When will sensor dampeners get a rework? As now they cannot serve their main function. They should be used to also reduce an opponent's lock range. Again, this is a question that has been asked before, and I've talked about this at length in other videos, but hey, let's go over it again because it has been a while. To make it easier for mobile gamers, we set the lock range at 1,000 kilometers, and it seems to be working well so far. We've previously discussed how to improve sensor dampeners, but we didn't come up with a viable solution yet that we feel would actually improve the overall gameplay experience. If you have any specific ideas about this, feel free to share them with us. Right, now actually, hang on a second, because somewhere over here I've got my notebook. We actually talked about this in the things I would like to see in the balance patch, and some people had some cool ideas. So I want to put them in this video now, and then I'm going to shove this under Wilson's nose and basically say, look, this is what we've thought. So sensor dampeners, I discussed in that video, they are currently utterly useless. We can't necessarily think of a good fix as the devs don't want locking range. Obviously the obvious one is to reduce the range at which you can lock onto someone, but considering most weapons are only like 120 kilometers anyway, a sensor dampener reducing you from 1,000 kilometers lock-on range to literally like 800 kilometer lock-on range, like, ooh, whoop-de-doo, you're not going to be able to do anything. So we had the idea here, why not give Galente the guidance disruptors, which is, you know, the ones that the Caldari currently have, because obviously the Galente are fighting the Caldari, then give the Caldari their electronic countermeasures back. Or heck, you could just make the sensor dampeners work like electronic countermeasures. For those who don't know, ECM, or electric countermeasures, is essentially a E-War module in EVE Online that the Caldari ships specialise in, and it forces people to unlock. Essentially, you hit someone with a ECM, with an electronic countermeasures device, and it will force them to lose lock on every ship they have. It is annoying as all hell, but now that we've got scanning coming into being in June with the scanning and exploration update, we could, you know, we're getting a lot more things like sensor strength and that actually coming into play a bit more. So the concept is, it's not just, oh, you click your fingers and they lose their lock. It has a certain strength to the ECM, so there is a chance that it will work. So like, say, a Mark 7 electronic countermeasures device might have a 30% chance of causing the enemy ship to lose all of its locks every activation, and it activates once every 30 seconds. So if it doesn't go off, it might then take 2 or 3 or 4 cycles for this to actually work and cause that ship to lose its lock. And you have it so that the enemies, the ship that you're targeting, its scan resolution comes into play against the strength of the ECM. Basically, this means that a ship with a high scan resolution is less likely to lose its lock than a ship with a low scan resolution, and obviously the higher that the ECM strength, the more likely it is to sort of jam it, which means if you've got a ship that's got a high scan resolution, you're going to need a high strength ECM to cause it to lose its lock. And then on the other hand, if you've got a ship that's got very low scan resolution, like say a battleship, you might only need a basic scan ECM jammer to actually, you know, force it to lose its lock. That would be my personal idea, and again, this is something, talk to me in the comments section, let me know what you guys think on that one. But there's our 4 questions. Ultimately, 3 questions because of the whole Corporation Outpost and Citadels, which was literally answered a couple of weeks ago. It's nice to know that we're going to get a way to customize how our Citadels look, because I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of how the Corporation Citadels look, and I would love them to look like, say, a Minmatar station, or some of the other stations that are currently available in EVE Online that you don't see in EVE Echoes. That would be pretty cool, I think, to be able to customize them. But yeah, I really think sensor dampeners do need to work, and I think that changing them to basically force an unlock is a great way to do that. I think that the Corporation Wallet feature, it's hit and miss. I don't know why I would necessarily want it myself. I feel like it's taking some of the skill and the player ability out of the game, but I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, and we are going to be getting new Titans, etc. in sort of September, October, November, and December, which is pretty cool as well. Anyway, folks, those are my thoughts and opinions here on the Developers Weekly Q&A. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. And remember, if you have a question you want to ask the developers, tap on your AI in-game. That's the little circle that looks a little bit like an eye. Tap on that, then tap on Q&A, ask your question. If your question is answered, you will get a month of Basic Omega, you'll get featured on Twitter, and you'll get featured on my channel here. Thanks for watching this one right the way to the end, folks. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!